Hello everyone, welcome back to another video on this channel, and today we're talking about Kyle. Because after an entire season of creepy, disgusting behavior from Kyle, this season of 90 Day Fiance Love in Paradise is finally coming to an end. And with the end of this season of 90 Day Fiance, we have another scene with Kyle being a creepy, weird asshole.
You're pregnant, sis.
You're crazy.
I feel like you were trying to pin the baby on me.
So let's get into it. The episode starts off with the producers reminding us just who Kyle is, with a scene of Kyle smelling his old dirty socks, wondering if he can reuse them again.
I'm just seeing if they smell. I mean, they're okay smelling. I don't know. I've only worn these a couple of days, these ones, so.
They smell okay. I've only worn them a couple days. That's so gross, man. Only a couple days? Only a couple days a reused sock smells okay to you? Kyle tells us that the whole point of this episode is, although he and Annie are indeed broken up, he wants to meet her one last time and get some kind of closure for the end of their relationship, given how much time they've spent together.
I plan on meeting Annie one last time. We had this time together. It's hard to just go separate ways and never speak again. I prefer to at least be cordial.
We catch up with Annie, who feels similarly about the situation. Annie is conflicted and sad on the one hand because she and Kyle had a great connection together. I mean, that's what she says at least. I don't think we ever saw their great connection on screen.
I'm feeling sad and disappointed because we had a great connection.
But she also feels relieved that finally this nightmare is over and she has some kind of answer about the future of their relationship.
But also, I'm feeling so relieved that we made a final decision.
Yeah, I understand feeling kind of conflicted, but if you feel relief that everything is at least over now, that's usually a good sign that breaking up was the right way to go. Annie and Kyle meet up at this really cute looking brunch lunch place. And finally, the two of them are ready to get the closure that they both want. I don't know if they started the conversation off camera or anything, but at least in the edits that we see on TV, they just jump straight into it by Annie suggesting that from her perspective, the reason they broke up was because Kyle wasn't putting enough effort into their relationship.
I just feel like that you didn't put enough effort in the whole relationship.
Which, I mean, I guess that might be a factor, but I kind of think the whole not willing to give up the whole sperm donation thing and the getting other women pregnant and the being a total weirdo creep in every episode and interaction they have, or maybe the point system, or the way he tried to control her fertility and that she can't trust him at all, and the whole betrayal arc. I don't know, who can say, except Annie, but it feels like the amount of effort into the relationship, I mean, that's a weird way to say that you won't stop sleeping with other women and getting the entire world pregnant in our relationship. You know what I mean? Don't know if that's how I would have worded it, at least. Kyle responds to that with his own idea of why the two of them broke up, and suggests that the real reason they broke up was because they had different priorities. He had his priorities, namely raising the whole incel army thing to take over the world, and Annie had her issues too.
I think it's more like I wanted what I want, my path that I chose, and you had your issues and that I didn't like.
And while I don't disagree that Annie may have her issues, I feel like the biggest issue, at least that we've seen on camera, is that she's willing to date Kyle to begin with. So not sure what issues he's referring to, but Kyle goes on to clarify that Annie's issues are still around her ex.
I just think that there's still issues with your ex. I mean, I just feel like you kind of cheated on me then.
No, I'm not cheated. You're not even committing to me, Kyle.
Okay, so we at least got one answer out of that interaction, which is Annie believes that, at least at the time, they were not exclusive in the relationship. We talked about that in the last video I made on them, where I was wondering if they really weren't exclusive, then Annie cheating on Kyle or hooking up with her ex the day before may not technically be in the realm of cheating, and if that was the case, then also in the earlier parts of the season where Annie was mad at Kyle for sleeping with the other women, the donation recipients that he went about the old natural way, that, again, just technically speaking, Kyle then may not have technically broken any rules in their relationship at the time either. which I mention and want to clarify very clearly right now because it makes it all the funnier then when Kyle hears Annie say that, okay, we weren't technically exclusive, therefore I didn't cheat on you. And Kyle's justification of why Annie is still in the wrong is that he's upset that Annie didn't consider how Kyle feels.
You're not even committing to me, Kyle.
I just feel like it hurts me because you didn't think about me, how I would feel. It hurts.
Imagine Kyle, of all people, saying, okay, but I'm upset that you didn't consider how I felt. Like, yeah, we should all be considering how our partners feel, but dude, Kyle, you're the worst offender of that this entire season. How many times did you bring up the point system, even though she kept saying that she doesn't like it? How many women did you donate to naturally without telling Annie, knowing that she'd be uncomfortable with all of it? And how about just last episode where she asked you to get the morning after pill and then you didn't because you don't think she has a good rational basis for wanting the morning after pill, and then just disregarding all of her feelings around that because you think that your position is more justified?
Based on my experience, making babies is what I know, right? It's just not realistic.
So tell me, Kyle, where in any of those examples that I just listed was it obvious that you were caring about how Annie felt? After that BS revelation from Kyle, the show then cuts to a one-on-one where they're talking about this interaction later.
I do understand that you are hurt by this.
Yeah, I was hurt by that.
Which kind of surprised me because seeing the two of them together in this one-on-one implies that whatever happened between the two of them, whatever fights and arguments and bad blood they may have, they both must have gotten together again to do this joint filming together. Again, this is a TV show, you know, maybe this whole thing is fake and Annie's just kind of an actor going along with it, but it also could be that they filmed this little one-on-one thing here like the day after the conversation, you know, while they still had them in the same place. So it's still recent enough where they're still trying to correct it or be kind of mad and bitter towards each other. Anyway, in this one-on-one scene with the two of them, they're fighting again about what happened. Kyle says he's hurt about the whole thing. Annie tries saying that she understands why Kyle will be hurt and tries telling him that whatever is going on with the ex, now I would choose you. Now that the two of us are together, I would have chosen you.
I do understand that you are hurt by this.
Yeah, I was hurt by that.
But from now on, I would have chosen you over him.
But Kyle hears all that, attempts at reassurance from Annie, and doesn't believe her at all.
I would have chosen you over him.
Do you mean that?
Yeah.
You would have. I don't believe that.
But you choose the nation
I don't
over
believe
me,
that. I don't
right?
believe that. I don't believe you. Yeah,
That's a pretty weird kind of fight they just had. We don't have a lot of other context of what's going on here, but it certainly sounds, at least at face value, that Kyle is still really hurt and very insecure about this ex thing. And despite Annie's attempts at reassuring him, Kyle can't seem to get over it. And it seems like he brings that insecurity with him as he continues his discussion with Annie back in the present day when he says this.
I have something else I'm curious about. It's kind of big. Are you being completely honest with me about your ex?
Again, with the ex stuff. Now, don't get me wrong, I can understand why Kyle would feel insecure. If they just had a conversation or a fight that effectively ended their relationship, and part of that discussion was the revelation that your now ex-partner hooked up with their ex the day before you showed up, I'd understand still, you know, that's still fresh. You still want to know, like, well, was this a real thing? I need more details of what's going on with that. Was that a bigger deal that affected our relationship more throughout this time together than I first thought? I need to do some more investigation. You know, I gotta find out what exactly is going on with Annie and her ex. I understand that, but the seemingly way this whole meeting was framed was as we just want to be cordial, you know, I just want to get some kind of closure and end things on a good note. That's what he said before.
We had this time together, it's hard to just go separate ways and never speak again. I prefer to at least be cordial.
But now that he's at the meeting, he's kinda ambushing her and giving her the 20 questions about this ex thing, which I guess is a way for him to get some kind of closure, but doesn't seem like his stated motivation was his real motivation. And that point is made even more clear when Kyle doesn't just want to talk about some of the details with her ex, he's got a whole theory on Annie's fertility with him.
Last time you met him was before I arrived. I know that you were not ovulating when you had sex, and so the impregnance is.
What are you talking about? Did they just cut out the entire other conversation they must have been having about Annie possibly being pregnant or having some kind of scare like that? Why, in this context, would you just randomly throw out there that, hey, this whole thing with your ex, if you're pregnant, then it's not mine, I've done the math.
Doing the math, her ex did it before I had sex with her, so there's a much, much, much higher chance of her ex being the father if she was pregnant.
What are you even talking about right now, dude? Unless there really was some kind of other conversation that happened off screen or through text or something about being pregnant, this is an extremely weird and very creepy thing to bring up right now. I'm just imagining Annie right now, she's going to meet up with her ex to get some kind of closure about the ending of their relationship. And then out of complete nowhere, they start giving me the whole 9 yards about if I'm pregnant and whose baby it is and just bringing all that stuff out of total left field. Like, I thought we were going to talk about our relationship. And now you're talking about if I'm pregnant and who's responsible and all that. Like, that's a pretty psychotic thing to bring up. And apparently, Annie feels the same way.
The impregnance is.
You're crazy. You're just crazy.
No, because it's science.
Again, just like their conversation about Annie wanting him to get the morning after pill and Kyle saying, no, I'm not going to get it for you because it doesn't make rational sense. It's just the science. Again, he's not understanding that the weird thing right now is to bring it up at all. Why are you talking about if I'm pregnant and going over, fertility right now? Like, that's a weird thing to say, but Kyle misses that completely. And again, just focuses on it's just the science. It technically would have a higher chance of if you and your ex had sex, then he would have a better odds of fertility than if I. That's not the point, dude. You're a freaking weirdo.
I feel like you just want to hurt me right now, and you're very disrespectful.
No, I'm not being disrespectful. I feel like you're trying to pin the baby on me.
What are you talking about? Who's pinning the baby on you? Does she even have an actual pregnancy scare? What are you talking about, dude? If that whole thing is just because Annie said, hey, we just had sex, I want to take an ovulation test, and just to be safe, I want the morning after pill. If that was the only impetus of why he is now thinking that she's pinning the baby on him, that would be such a distorted, way more sperm and pregnancy focused way of seeing the world. Like, I doubt that's even in the top 5 of things Annie is thinking about for this conversation. But not only is it number 1 for Kyle, he seems to think that the entire rest of the world also sees things the way he does in this fertility pregnancy way, And seems completely oblivious and closed off to the idea that maybe Annie's not thinking about pregnancy all the time. And not only is Annie weirded out by this whole discussion about pregnancy in general, she's also quite insulted that Kyle thinks that Annie just needs to have his sperm and that she would be trying to pin it on Kyle to get him to be the father.
I feel like you're trying to pin the baby on me.
Why? For what? Do you think I need a Peter Pan who doesn't know how to live a normal life?
It did seem like you were trying to pin it on me.
What are you talking about? Kyle is so delusional right now. Why? What evidence do you have, Kyle? Mr. Scientific, that's not rational, higher probability. What evidence do you have that would suggest that Annie is pretending to be pregnant, or at least forcing that, and trying to pin it on you of all people? What hardcore, scientific, fact-based information are you basing your hypothesis on? Because if your only hardcore evidence of why this must be the case is, well, we had sex and she wanted to get me the morning after pill for her, then you'd be interpreting a normal woman that has complete and total agency over her own life and her own body and her own reproductive system. You'd be interpreting her desire to be on the safe side and look after herself as a partial infraction and injustice on you, and that her desire to just be safe and look after herself must be part of some kind of conspiracy to pin a pregnancy on your genetics. That, to me, sounds completely delusional.
It did seem like you were trying to pin it on me.
Oh my
for
God.
something that I knew wasn't going to happen.
Oh my God, you're like really mental. I think you're ass right. You are jackass, really.
Annie, seemingly sharing in my shock and disdain, walks away from the conversation in anger over how completely ridiculous and mental Kyle is.
Is he crazy?
I guess that's it.
Annie then tells us, the camera, how she absolutely, definitely does not want to have a baby with Kyle under any circumstances.
I don't want to have a baby with Kyle, definitely not. At this moment, I feel just so disgusted by him.
While Kyle gives us his closing thoughts on what just happened.
That was kind of not how I wanted this to end. I wanted to try to end this on at least a somewhat good note.
You wanted this to go well, and for it to have gone more cordially, and yet you immediately ambush her and even accuse her of trying to pin the pregnancy on you. That's your idea of ending things on a nice, cordial note? We then get some reflections from Kyle onto the relationship and his history with women and why he does donating in the first place. And essentially, it boils down to basically what we already thought. Well, besides the whole narcissism and world domination thing. Kyle says that basically he's just been really lonely throughout a lot of his life. He's been looking for a romantic companion for some time now, and although he wasn't able to get his attachment needs met through a companionship or real human interaction, he then picked up sperm donation as a kind of hobby that helped fill some kind of hole and made him feel some kind of less lonely.
I've been craving a companion for years now. My life is pretty solitary, and the sperm donation makes me feel less lonely because even though it isn't like companionship, it still gives me a sense of purpose.
Personally, after all the Kyle scenes that I've watched and all the deep dives and research that I've done into him over the last few weeks, I'm willing to believe that that may be a motivation for him. But again, as I've expressed many times throughout this series of videos I've been doing on Kyle, I don't think that adequately explains everything else about him and the weirdness and the controlling behavior and all that stuff that I've been covering in all these videos about it. Check out the Kyle Cordy playlist I made for you right here, by the way. I don't, at least in my opinion, think that it's quite that simple. Yes, he may be lonely, but you might also then ask, well, why have you been lonely? Why haven't you been able to form committed, emotionally healthy relationships with people? At least to me, as someone who has consumed way too much Kyle media at this point, frankly, I'm way too knowledgeable about Kyle and the things he's said online. At least in my opinion, I think there is an entire missing element with Kyle and his self-understanding of what his own personal responsibility and everything is. Yes, we can understand that you're lonely and maybe this fills some kind of void, but you gotta do the work, man. You gotta figure out why you're in the situation that you're in. You gotta analyze, if this is the situation you're in, how can you get those needs met in a way that is more healthy? Which is, again, why I found it so funny that his criticism of Annie in this conversation was, okay, yeah, maybe you didn't cheat, but you didn't consider my feelings and that's why I'm upset. Like, bitch, don't act like you understand that concept now. Anyway, well, what was I saying? Kyle's not done. Kyle says that he's been lonely, that donating fills some kind of void within him, but also believes that even though he recognizes that because he's been lonely and doesn't have his emotional needs met, that therefore he's using sperm donation as a poor substitute to get those needs met.
The sperm donation makes me feel less lonely because even though it isn't like companionship, it still gives me a sense of purpose.
He then follows that up by saying that he still thinks he needs to find a partner, but one that accepts that sperm donation world of his, and that he's not going to stop donating the sperm, and that's ultimately this poor substitute for an actual committed healthy relationship is more important to him than the actual healthy committed relationship.
But I don't think I could fully give up sperm donation for anyone. There's a woman out there that could accept me for having kids all around the world. I just need to keep looking for her.
And then Kyle ends all this reflection on his part with suggesting that, at the very least, however poorly this conversation went and the end of their relationship, at least there's a silver lining. And that silver lining is that because he can now leave Malta early, he can go get another girl pregnant.
The silver lining with this, I am leaving early, and because of that, I'm going to be able to make it to a donation, and hopefully she gets pregnant. So you scheduled to get a girl pregnant before you even left Malta?
You scheduled ahead of time to get a girl pregnant? It's like, what, in the off chance that this whole love of your life, first time relationship thing wouldn't work out, then at least you get to go get a woman pregnant? What? And while that's the last scene we have of Kyle on this season, we then get Annie's last scene, where we see her back at her house, cutting up a banana just straight up on the countertop, no cutting board or anything. It's kind of weird. We meet her first kid, which is kind of poetic that we, the audience, get introduced to the child, whereas Annie didn't feel comfortable introducing her child to Kyle this whole time.
I am glad that I didn't introduce Kyle to my son.
We hear her say that she believes Kyle is immature and insecure.
Because I feel like he's a very insecure, immature person.
She wonders how she could have been so wrong in her impression with Kyle, given how strong her feelings were for him.
I wondered how I could just be so wrong when my feelings towards him were so strong.
Where, to me, I think she kind of answered her own question there. And lastly, coming full circle, Annie reveals that after this whole chaotic, weird experience, she is finally ready to date a nice, boring guy.
I don't want to compete with any strangers, woman you had sex with, I'm ready for maybe a boring, nice guy.
Which I thought was a nice fitting end and reminded me of the prediction that I had, I think in the second episode video that I made on them, where I speculated that perhaps the only reason she got into someone and seems to be accepting of just how weird and disturbing Kyle is that she may have an addiction to chaos or was modeled a lot of troubling behavior as a kid, and now as an adult may interpret the nice, safe guy as boring. And that's why she was into Kyle, because she may have a track record or an apparent attraction to chaos and all that bad stuff. And after that revelation from Annie, the episode ends. We didn't get a preview of the tell-all at the end of this episode, which makes me wonder, are they just not doing it for this season? I don't recall if they've done it for every season of Love in Paradise, and I guess they only have 4 couples, that's not that big of a cast to really do a tell-all with. But I'd also think that of all the cast members that you would want to see go on a tell-all and have all of America and the other cast members and Shawn, the host, call out to be like, yo, what the F are you doing? Like, this is super weird. You think we'd all want to hear everyone gang up on Kyle and make him a laughingstock on TV, So, but I don't know. Are they just not doing that? You tell me. Do you have any information that I don't know? That's all I got for today's video. Let me know what you thought about Kyle and Annie in the comments down below. A big thank you to all of you channel members for helping support this channel and keeping the channel growing, with an extra special thank you to Nancy Jones for being a producer of this channel. Make sure to hit subscribe, hit the like button, ring the bell for notifications, hit the join button, become a channel member, and all those, write the comments, do all those nice, lovely things. And until next time, I'll see you later.